Well, some labour unions are of the view that government can still do something to alleviate workers from high taxes that are associated with the withdrawal from the two-part retirement system. Now, this is despite, of course, the Revenue Laws Amendment that is effective from today in order to allow the workers to access a portion of their retirement savings. And as things stand, SARS has indicated tax for all withdrawals will be calculated at marginal rates, meaning that at your current tax bracket. Well, to find out if this is still the situation, let's extend a very warm welcome to SARS Commissioner Mr. Edward Kieswetter, who's made the time to come and sit with me here in studio. Mr. Kieswetter, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. So a lot of conversations, excitement coupled with uncertainty. What would you like to say to those people that are, of course, saying that they're scared that actually the bulk of their withdrawals from the savings pot is going to go to the taxman?
Well, first of all, it's a pleasure to be here and join you on the show, Alicia. The first caution I would say is be careful before you withdraw any money, because this is really savings for your retirement, the day when you reach the age and you don't work anymore, and so this is future income. Now, the second important point, which we often miss, is that the way the laws have been drafted up until now in respect of retirement savings is that any contribution from current earnings or that is deferred for your retirement, the tax obligation for that amount is also deferred. Which means that if you earn 100 Rand and you take 15 Rand and you save it towards retirement in a permissible fund, then that 15 Rand is not taxed. Only the 85 Rand would be taxed. And so now, when you make an early withdrawal, you are withdrawing future income, but you are withdrawing it earlier, and therefore you're also triggering the tax event earlier. And that's why the withdrawal amount is taxable. You made the point that the amount is taxable at your current rate, and that's important because, again, the way the laws are written, you are taxed on your total income for the current year. If you think about it, if you had to withdraw this money after retirement, most people in all likelihood will be at a lower income level, and therefore they will actually pay at a lower rate. Now, because you're adding this income, in addition to your existing income, you possibly might even trigger a higher tax rate. And therefore, the counsel is only withdraw this money if it is really for an emergency, putting your kid through university or school, or a medical emergency, or some other family emergency. Certainly not to pay for that long-awaited holiday at an exotic institution. So that's important, why tax is deducted. And then the second important consideration about tax is, if you have any debt that is owed to SARS, it also means that SARS will first deduct the tax, then it will withhold the amount and will instruct the pension fund to pay out, and that's what the directive is, to pay out the amount after the withholding the tax and after withholding the debt owed to SARS.
What about those that have a current arrangement payment plan with SARS, or those that might say that they're not even aware that they were actually indebted to SARS?
Excellent question. So first of all, if there's an arrangement in place, not a garnishee order, by the way. That's not an
I was going to go there. Yes, so maybe please address that as well.
What we mean by an arrangement is the law allows a taxpayer under certain circumstances to approach SARS and to say, I owe you 100 Rand. I don't dispute it. Can I pay this off over 3 parts? SARS will then consider your financial situation, because this can't just be SARS is not a bank, it doesn't extend credit. But if the circumstances warrants it, SARS may permit you to pay it over 3 or 4 months, and in which case that arrangement will supersede the deduction of the full amount. Mm-hmm. And so we've made it easy. We will this weekend be launching a tax calculator. And the calculator will allow you to play around with how much do I want to withdraw. It will show you the total
so it's still not active, because I saw on the website that it should be...
It should be released
yes.
now over the weekend. Mm-hmm. In fact, I think it's been released
actually running as
we speak, because today is the day.
Yes.
And so you will be able to say, I want to withdraw X. This is the amount I owe SARS. This is the amount SARS will deduct for tax purpose. It will take into account any arrangement. And therefore you will have a good idea before you actually apply for the directive what the actual financial payment will be after all of these issues have been dealt with. Mm-hmm. An important consideration, though, is before you even apply for the directive to your pension fund, make sure that you are tax compliant. Firstly, make sure you are registered, and I'll come to that in a moment, because it's easy to check that. And secondly, make sure you have no outstanding returns, because that will end up delaying your directive and creating unnecessary frustrations. Mm-hmm. We also want to discourage taxpayers from rushing off to the SARS office and join the already long queues, because there are still people at the tail end of filing season. And so what we have done is we have a system of e-filing or Mobi app for those who are who have access to e-filing or access to a smartphone. We also have a WhatsApp number that SARS allows you, or when we talk about a simple phone that isn't a smartphone, a USSD phone, you can SMS or you can type that number, and if you need, I can share with you what those details are.
Absolutely.
And then there's also an SMS. And using these facilities, you can actually get your tax number by, for example, SMSing your ID number to us, and with the prefix tax. Or if you want to know if you owe a balance, you can SMS to us with the prefix balance. You can get a statement of account that'll tell you what your current status is. And we would really encourage taxpayers, in the comfort of their homes, within their own time, to do a bit of a hygiene check first on their tax status before they apply for the directive. Because once you've applied, then the train has left the station, and if there are any roadblocks, any obstacles, it's going to cause frustration, and we want to avoid that for those who are desperately waiting to trigger that first withdrawal.
Edward, let's talk about some of the possible changes that could be associated with, of course, the implementation of this program. I believe that SARS has had to make some changes in your back-end systems in order to allow for two-part related directives. So how do these then impact, we've just spoken about it, e-filing, and overall some of the other forms and documentation pertaining to one's tax affairs?
So remember, we call our tax categories products. So you're a subscriber for VAT, for PIT, for company tax, for excise duty to customs, depending on the nature of your business and the form of your income.
Yes.
This is just another offering. And what we had to do is interpret the law and build the systems so that it takes your current saving spot information from the pension fund, the asset managers. It then divides it into the two pots, the retirement pot, which is the longer term pot, and then the savings pot. Remember, for this year, it caps that savings component to 30,000. In the future, all payments will be divided into a third to the savings pot and 2/3 to the retirement pot, and you will every year be able to make a withdrawal from the savings pot should the need arise. Now, our job is firstly to draft the law from the policy that has been agreed to and signed off by the Minister of Finance, developed in consultation with National Treasury and SARS, and then to codify our system to allow for you to continue, as you with all our other offerings, to engage with us on our digital platform. Mm-hmm. In the back end, the necessary code is written, the necessary calculations will be done seamlessly to the withdrawer, the necessary health check will be done, the necessary risk profiling will be done, because we also need to detect fraud or any other impermissible transaction. And then it will use all of that information quite seamless to the taxpayer. And when SARS receives the online request for a directive, it will conduct all of these calculations and risk assessments and provide the pension fund with a directive, which will then say, this is the amount that the taxpayer have requested. Against this is the tax that you must withhold. If there is no arrangement in place, this is the debt that you must withhold. And the fund then pays over the money to SARS, that is due to SARS, and pays the balance to the bank account. So it's quite complicated. But we have worked.
Are you doing anything to simplify this? I mean, the current tax system in its current form, Commissioner, is already complicated, and a lot of people that are not tech savvy are actually struggling, even with e-filing.
So let me just make this clear, that the interface between the taxpayer and SARS is simple. Now, I know there are exceptions, and I'll come to the exceptions in a moment. But we work quite hard to simplify the engagement between ourselves and a taxpayer, to the point where you will know this current filing season, for example, more than 5 million taxpayers had to do nothing. How much simpler can it get?
Auto-assessed.
You've been auto-assessed. We do that firstly using third-party data. And by that we mean information from your payroll, information from the banks, information from retirement funds, information from from banks overseas if you have a foreign bank account. We can also access other information sources like NATIS, like the Deeds Office. And then we build a composite picture of your financial affairs that does not require you to disclose it to us. There's a couple of exceptions, which I'll come to in a moment. But then largely using information that we have access to, we then will use our automatic tax processing engine to calculate your tax result. We then take the result through a risk, fraud risk or compliance risk engine, let's call it an engine for simplicity, and that will then flag any risk of, for example, something that doesn't make sense on your income or something that doesn't make sense on your expenditure, which renders the outcome, like a refund, it renders it impermissible. Mm. And then we will engage with you. We call that the verification.
Okay.
And that typically we will try and complete within 21 days so that we can finalize your affairs. Now, there are non-standard cases. Your category of employment may typically be one of those where you have consulting work, you may have income from more than one employer, and so you are what we call a non-standard taxpayer. Mm-hmm. And very often not all your income is declared through one of the regular third-party sources.
Mm-hmm. Or you earn below the regular tax threshold.
Well, if you earn below the threshold, but here's the thing, that you may earn below the tax threshold. Let me take myself as an example, right? I retired from Eskom 1 million years ago, and I decided then that I would not withdraw my pension fund. I am a deferred pensioner. So every month I get a pension payment from Eskom. Eskom may not know that I'm also a SARS employee that gets income from SARS. I also have decided that my former employer, Alexander Forbes, has transferred that money to a savings fund. So I get 3 incomes from my regular employment, from my past employers, in addition to any other income from interest, etc. Each one of them may not know what my tax rate is. But here's the thing. SARS will take all of those various streams of income and add it, and then decide which. So one of the streams of income may have been at, let's say, 30% or 27%. Another may be at my marginal rate. And it will just take all of the streams of income, added as one aggregate income amount, and then take the marginal rate and calculate whether you owe SARS more tax. And then sends you this lovely letter that says, you owe us some more money. So it makes it simple for the individual, but very often the individual does not expect that because they are not necessarily knowledgeable of the tax, the way the tax system works. We can step up a lot more in terms of communicating to those. We do have seminars, we have webinars, but the sense is we can always do more to help, because our strategic objectives are very clear. The first is to help remove any uncertainty and complexity. The second is to make it as easy as we can, and happily we have done so for many, many taxpayers. And then only thirdly do we look for non-compliance, and if there are instances, we then also will have to unapologetically enforce the laws as it is required.
A very quick one, Mr. Kieswetter. Before I let you go, I'm out of time. My directors are going to kill me. I mean, any teething issues that you're anticipating, like, of course, the digital scams that are currently on the high rise, where we've actually seen during tax season where you get an email or a text from SARS pertaining or purporting to be from SARS, and then people end up losing, parting with their hard-earned monies.
Almost always, profiles are compromised by practitioners or by the user. And so sometimes you share your profile. Also, if you use the same password over multiple platforms, and it's also your password for your access to your e-filing, there's a high likelihood that you have compromised your own password. Never follow a link. SARS will not send you a link. It will give you the official, and so also avoid using platforms that are not the official SARS platforms. So we have done a lot to strengthen our system. We've introduced a 2-factor authentication, which means typically you have a one-time PIN or a further verification exercise. We're working hard to get our biometrics to get one step up so that you don't have to remember passwords if your face appears on the screen. So we are looking at all of those, but a lot of these things only work for smartphones.
Yes.
And we still have many of our people who don't have smartphones, but also sometimes are unsuspecting and follow a link and end up compromising themselves. We also are alive to the fact that where a SARS employee colludes with a taxpayer, we will treat that very, very as a serious offense, and such an employee will definitely face dismissal and potentially also a criminal charge from SARS.
Ooh, Commissioner, I wish we had more time to deliberate on some of the various issues that have been popping out pertaining to, of course, the two-pot system. But that's where we're going to leave it. Thank you so much for making time to come all the way to studio on this Sunday afternoon right here on the SABC News channel. That is SARS Commissioner there, Mr. of course, Edward Kieswetter there, just sharing some light into some of the need-to-knows pertaining to how your two-part retirement fund will actually be taxed. We hope that we have certainly addressed some of your questions and concerns.